The Fairstone Scottish Amateur Championship for 2013 took a break away from links golf to come inland to the magnificent Blairgowrie Golf Club in the Lansdowne Course. The host club would have been hoping for a home win with 5 quality golfers in the field, including Scottish internationalist Bradley Neal and this man, 2005 champion Glenn Campbell. It wasn't to be for the Blairgowrie golfers though. All of them exited by the second round stage. Perhaps they didn't enjoy the heavy showers that were to burden the tournament early on, but with a little help from the greenkeeping staff and the volunteers, the course held up remarkably well through the torrential downpours. None of them lasted too long though. As you can see, Matt Clark from Kilmacombe here in his second round tie against Alex Moyer. A nice tee shot in the driving rain. By the time he'd reached the green it had gone off a little, and he could settle down and sink a lovely putt for a birdie too. He came through and he beat Craig Laurie in the third round, and in the fourth round met this man, young Connor Syme from Dumfries and Galloway, here getting himself a birdie on the par 3 fifth, and he beat Matt Clark and progressed through. Last year's champion, Grant Forrest, was bidding to become the first player to defend the title in 30 years, and he was going about it the right way. Beautiful approach play here in the early rounds on the par 4 10th. But for the first time ever in competitive golf, he found himself going to extra holes in his fourth round tie against Ryan Lumsden up from Wimbledon. That putt had to go in to keep the match going under the watchful eye of national coach Ian Ray. Then on hole number 20, Ryan had this putt to win the match, just shaving the edge of the hole. Ryan found himself in some trouble in the third extra hole and had this lengthy putt for a par 4, and under the most intense pressure he managed to hole out. Grant still had this for a birdie though, and last year's champion looking very good. And of course Grant qualified for the Open at Muirfield this year. Especially nice for him, just living a few miles down the road. His reward was a 5th round tie against Jamie Savage, who'd enjoyed some massive victories this week, 6-4, 6-5 and a 7-6. But he couldn't keep up that form against Grant, who had this putt on the 18th to progress, and once again, right in the heart of the hole, and Grant made it through into the quarter-finals where he faced this man, Liam Halliday, who had just knocked out Connor Syme. But Grant won in the end and got himself through to the semi-finals. In the second quarter of the draw, Kyle McClung from Wigtonshire County was making steady progress. Here we see him with his tee shot at the par 3 9th and his third round tie, setting up a good birdie opportunity, which he duly converted. He made it through to the quarter-finals, where he lost out to this man, Xander Culverwell, the golfer from Dunbar who's studying at the University of Stirling as part of their golf programme under Dean Robertson. And he beat Kyle McClung, and he also beat last year's champion Grant Forrest to make it through to the final. In the third quarter of the draw, Pollock's Conor O'Neill had made a bright start. His attacking style of play had seen him through to the quarter-finals previously in this tournament. His reward for this victory was a 4th round tie against this man. Now, any guesses? It's Jack McDonald, also studying at the University of Stirling, playing a lovely shot there for a recovery and a par 4 to make it past Conor O'Neill and through into the quarter-finals, where his opponent was this man, Craig Ross from Kirkhill. Here we see him in action in one of the earlier rounds with a very tidy short game. And Craig, well, he went on to beat Jack McDonald and make it through into the semi-finals from the third quarter of the draw. Down in the bottom quarter of the draw, David Mitchell from Leven Thistle was going well. A magnificent putt here on the long par 5 8th for a birdie. And David would make it through to the 5th round, where his opponent was this young man, Ewan Ferguson. Now, he'd had a good run at the Scottish Boys this year, a player who obviously relishes the match play format. Ewan would win that tie and make it through to the quarter-finals. perhaps the most intriguing tie of the fourth round was former Order of Merit winner James White versus Scottish internationalist Graham Robertson. This time it was White who would come out on top and make his way through to the fifth round, where he met this man, Alan Dick, a quality golfer. He's played for Scotland and he's won many tournaments throughout the country. And a beautiful shot from the Lothians man, keeping it low under the tree, up onto the green here at the par 4 12th. Setting up this birdie opportunity. And in it went. Unfortunately for Alan though, this kind of golf was only good enough, yes we got that, was only good enough for a 4-3 defeat. By this point James White's putter was red hot with a barrage of birdies, and how about this for a winning putt on the 15th green. James on his way to the final after beating two top opponents in one day.
I actually played with Alan at Hags 3 weeks ago, and he shot some like 6 under in the first round, so I thought, I've seen him putt really well and I thought if he does that again I'm in trouble, but fortunately it was me that was holding putts this afternoon, so long may that continue.
It did continue through his quarter final against Ewan Ferguson and his semi against Craig Ross to give us the final, James White versus Xander Culverwell. Xander teeing off first. Well, he's got a good record in this tournament, made it through to the 4th and 5th rounds in the last 2 years. But James, quarter finalist 2 years ago, looking to add the national title to his Order of Merit that he picked up in the same year. But he was up against a tough opponent. Xander had played the opening holes well all week, and again with a birdie on the first to go one up straight away. Moving down to the second, both players, after their approach shots, had birdie putts. James was up first, and he holed it. Beautiful stuff there from the golfer from London Links, and he would hoped that might be enough to get things back onto level terms. As it was, Xander from the fringe was having none of that. Straight in the middle of the hole, and still one up after 2 holes played. Down onto the third, and a rare mistake from Culverwell, pulling his approach into the bunker. He failed to knock that putt in, and things were all square. By the time we pick up the match again, Xander is back to 1 up, and this with his approach shot at the long par 5/8, and the backspin taking the ball to no more than 5 or 6 feet away from the hole. Xander converted the birdie putt, his 4th in the opening 8 holes, to move to 2 up. And even when he had to hole a putt just for a half, like here at the 10th for a par 4, he managed it, and by this point he was now 3 up. On to the 11th, and James beginning a little bit of a comeback, holing out here for a par 4, but that was good enough to take the hole and take it back to 2 up for Culverwell. By the time we reached the 16th, once again, Xander was 3 up, and James had pushed his drive just a touch into the semi-rough, but this approach shot, well, it impressed the crowds, it certainly impressed the cameraman, and it was good enough to take the 16th and bring the score back to 2 in favour of Culverwell. And by the time we reached the 18th, White had this putt to bring it back to 1 at the halfway stage, setting things up nicely for the afternoon's play. By the time they reached the 7th again, the 25th hole, Xander was 2 up. But James once again, with the sharp, short game, chipping in to bring it back to just 1. And that was the pattern of play for the afternoon. Xander incredibly steady, James a little bit more erratic and relying on his short game to keep him in the match. At the 9th for the second time, Xander still 1 up, playing a very nice tee shot indeed. You can see James's ball was short, and Xander had that birdie opportunity to take things back to 2 up. The stroke had been very steady, but just catching the edge of the hole, and perhaps Xander beginning to feel the effects of not being able to shake off his opponent despite being the steadier player. At the 11th, James was in all sorts of trouble, hitting his tee shot into the trees, but Xander safely in the middle of the fairway, played up this approach shot. Got down in 2 for there, and a par was good enough to take him back to 2 up. Moving on to the next, the par 4 12th. And James just a little bit bold with his approach shot. This his third, knocking it close enough to make it safe for a par 4. His short game coming in again to help him out. Although this time Xander stood over a birdie putt with another chance to increase his lead. This time to take it to 3 up. And this time the ball dropped. Beautiful birdie again there from Xander. Although he cancelled out all his good work at the next hole, conceding to James, making the difference 2. With the 14th halved, back up to the 15th. And Xander needing this to keep the gap at 2, moving on to the 16th. Another putt converted as the sunshine came out on the spectators and golfers. Now the golfers with their approaches here at the 16th. And Xander, another magnificent approach right over the top of the flag, spinning back to no more than 5 or 6 feet. And he might have been thinking, hold that putt for a 3-2 victory. But of course James, well, he hit the flag with his approach here earlier in the day. Not quite the same result this time, and just sitting on the fringe and leaving an awkward little putt, especially looking at Xander's from only 5 or 6 feet. James might have been thinking, hold this, get it back to 1, or hold this just to keep in the match. Either way, he certainly hold it. And although his game was a little erratic on the day, he certainly coped with the pressure when he had to. Now Xander, from thinking he might have won the match on this green, knowing he needed to hole out to keep the gap at 2, and he did. Still 2 up, moving on to the 17th. Another great putt there from Xander. And the crowd's appreciating the golf and enjoying the birdies. Well, Kenny Smith was there with his camera, and when Kenny rolls up, you know the end is near. Both golfers on the green after 3 at the long par 5 17th, and Xander rolling up his birdie putt just to the edge of the hole. That was good enough for a par. James was about 12 feet away after having to come out of the bunker, but he knew if he holed this putt, he could take things down the 18th and keep the match alive. And it just caught on the edge, and that was the end of the match. And that meant that the Fairstone Scottish Amateur Champion for 2013 was the man from Dunbar, Xander Culverwell.
I was steady all week, to be honest with you. I've just tried to hit as many fairways and greens as possible. That golf course, it's very demanding off the tee, so just try to give myself opportunities to hit shots into the green. It's the small green, so if you hit the greens, you give yourself a chance, especially with the greens at pure. Real great today. After birdieing 4 out of the first 8 holes, Xander settled into some very steady golf. Exactly what was needed to beat his opponent today. James is a great player. He's got a great short game. Never out of a hole, which showed several times today.
White's recovery play did keep him in the match, but Culverwell himself holed many important putts to ensure victory.
I managed to chip and putt and try and keep myself in the game, but Xander played too solid for me in the end. He hit a lot of fairways and greens, and he holed out well coming down the stretch. Some vital putts that he had to make for halves, and he did that well.
And another success for the golf programme at the University of Stirling.
We've got so many great guys on our team, and they say success breeds success. So Cormac Sharvin won the Irish Close this year, and Matthias Eggenberger won the Belgium last year. So knowing that they have done it and I practice with them all the time kind of gave me that confidence that I can go on and do it.
Congratulations, Xander Culverwell, Fairstone Scottish Amateur Champion for 2013.